With that down and out of the way, let's move on to the fifth and final main topic of the day. And our fifth and final main topic today comes to us from Mark Nieves, who writes, I've been a big fan of your career since the AMC days. Thank you so much, Mark. I appreciate that, man. Wanted to ask you, how is the process of making your show every day? I don't want to know all your secrets, but a rundown of how you make it look so easy. I don't know if I make it look easy. Thanks for bringing on so many hours of enjoyment. All right. Thanks a lot for that question, Mark. And it's a Friday, so why not do give you guys a little bit of a peek behind the curtain to see what it is that's going on here, what it is I do here. So sure, why not? Let's do that. All right. So the first thing I'm going to say, let's run down the schedule. What does my daily schedule for a regular weekday John Campea show look like? So here's the general schedule of what pulling one of these shows together looks like. And then we'll go into some of the technical aspects, if you'll indulge me. So here we go. Generally speaking, an individual John Campea's show day starts at 3 p.m. the day before the show, okay? That's generally when a John Campea Show episode begins coming together, is at 3 p.m. roughly 3 p.m. the day before. So at 3 p.m., what I start doing is I start researching topics and once I go through all the topics, the news feeds, going through all the news sites, reading up on stories, doing a little bit of research, blah, blah, blah. I come out of that and I pick what the movie news feed stories are going to be. You guys know that Fact Checker Jonathan does the movie news feed every day. Well, that's right around the time when I start to go through to identify and pick out what the 5 stories are that I want to be a part of the movie news feed. And there's a lot of stories every day and there's a lot of reading to be done and blah, blah, blah. But still, I'm able to usually knock that part out in about an hour. Then at about 4 o'clock, I start reading through, and I read all of them, the 100 to 200 emails that get sent in every day, or the forms that you guys fill out at www.thejohncampeashow.com/contact. When you fill that out and hit submit, it emails me that response. So I've got 100 to 200 of those that I need to go through every day, not to mention just other emails that people send me to that email address regarding the show. So about 4 o'clock, I go through those and I start to pick out what our main topics are going to be for the next day's show. Now, not all the main topics are out there by 4 to 6 p.m. on a day, but at least there are a few of them out there. So I start to go through those emails and I start to pick out what our main topics are going to be. I go through and read the emails. If a topic sounds interesting, I go and do a little bit of research to see, is there something interesting to say about it? All that kind of stuff. That process usually takes, again, generally it's give or take, generally a couple of hours. So that takes me up to about 6 p.m. Now at about 6:15 p.m., again, give or take, I'll make a preview video for the next day's show. Some of you who follow me on social media know that earlier this week, or was it last week, I started this new thing where I put out a 1-minute video, 45-second to 1-minute video each night, giving you guys a little bit of a look into what we're going to be talking about as main topics the next day on the John Campea Show. So I'll say, hey guys, it's John, here's some of the stories we're working on for tomorrow's John Campea Show, and I'll read down the list of the stories that we're going to be covering just to give you guys a heads up for the next day. So I record that, publish it, all that kind of stuff. Now, after that's done, around 6:30, 6:45, then I still have meetings. I have to do all my social media stuff because I maintain a number of social media platforms. I go through the comments of that day's John Campea Show that we did earlier that morning. I go through, because even though I don't respond a lot, I actually read, I used to say I read all of the comments. There are so many comments now that I must admit I don't read all of them, but I do spend a lot of time going through comments and reading as many as I can. And then of course screenings in the evening, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. Okay, so now we get to the day of the show. And it's 5 a.m. So at 5 a.m., the first thing I do is I start searching for news stories that broke overnight or broke that morning. Because remember, 5 a.m. here in Los Angeles is actually 8 a.m. on the East Coast, and a lot of news is already coming out. So about 5 a.m., I start checking for news stories, going through all the sources again very quickly, and seeing if there's anything major that I will make as a part of Off the Tops. At about 5:30 a.m., I begin making graphics. Now, you might say to yourself, but John, I thought Ray did all the graphics. Well, no, what Ray actually does right now is Ray does our main template graphics, and he also does the graphics for all the thumbnails and all major graphics. But graphics for things that are in the show, like this graphic you see right here. All graphics that are actually used in the show itself, for the most part, are graphics of things that I need to put together myself. So about 5:30 in the morning, Let me see if I can pull this up here. At about 5:30 in the morning, what I do is I pull up, and let me give you a quick look at this. I pull up Photoshop, and for each one of these topics, I put together these what I call framework graphics. So framework graphics for each thing. Of course, I go in the middle here. This is where you'd see me in the middle. And then I just select out images. I think go with the story, plop one in here, plop one in there, come up with a little title for it, export it as a transparent graphic to be integrated a little bit later. Then, of course, again, there are these little side graphics. Here's one that I used earlier in the show. So whether they're factoids or infographics or just headline graphics, I make these things, get those exported out. Sometimes I got to do a little bit of work and touch on the thumbnail a little bit myself, all that kind of stuff. So there's that there as well. So I start making those graphics. That takes me a while. That takes me about 2 hours to make all the in-show graphics. Now, once the in-show graphics are done around 7:30 a.m., what I then do is I go and put together the live event on YouTube. So I write the description, do all the keywords, set the release time, all that kind of stuff. Takes me about a half hour to write it all up. Sometimes a little bit less, but generally speaking, about a half hour, get that all set and publish the YouTube live event. Now, at 8 a.m., remember, we start at 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. At 8 a.m., what I then do is start to assemble the broadcast project in a piece of software I use called Wirecast, and I'll bring it up here right now. So here's Wirecast. Ignore the infinity stuff going on up here. But down here, I now take all those graphics, all right? I take all those graphics and I start assembling them. So like, for instance, one of these, I'll show you, one of these shots here. One of these shots where we've got me in the shot, the title, I've got sound and alerts come up because when somebody puts in a super chat, the super chat alert comes up, all that kind of stuff. So to put this shot together, what I do is I take that shot, and you can see on the side here, there's a bunch of different layers. I just layer these things together, get them all positioned for each individual shot. And I need to do that for each single shot. Then I make some of the top line graphics, things like, like our emails, like an email graphic like that, getting those placed, putting everything in order, all that kind of stuff. So I just basically start to assemble the broadcast, make sure the audio is working in all of them. You guys who've watched the show know that sometimes we have accidental audio issues where you'll hear echoes and things like that. This is where I got to go through all these shots, make sure that everything is balanced out correctly. We got everything that we need and all that kinds of stuff. So at about 8 a.m., that's when I do the assembling the broadcast into the Wirecast project. So that's at 8. Now at 8:30 a.m., by around 8:30 a.m., Rob and when Ashley was still here, Ashley and Rob would show up around 8. Now it's just Rob showing up at 8:30, I mean. So at 8:30, Rob and I take our places and we do our final camera checks and mic checks, making sure that in shots like this one you're looking at right now, that I'm properly positioned in the shot, that the audio is working properly, that the our camera positioning in all the various different types of shots, like this one, that I'm properly positioned. When it's Rob and me, we'll have a graphic here in the middle with Rob and me on both sides, making sure that we're all properly positioned and all that kind of stuff. So that's generally what we do at 8:30 in the morning. Then, of course, when all that's done, we start our final countdown. And from 9 a.m. to about 11 or 11:15, to be honest, is when we do the live show. That's the hours that we do the live show. So we've been taking up to about 2 hours. Sometimes it goes longer than that. So roughly say about 11:15. That's the live show. Now, once the live show is complete, at about 11:30 a.m., I take the live show, because I also record it, and then I edit and chop up the individual segments. So each story that we talked about, I edit out into an individual video clip that we then put up on the YouTube channel later. Now, the reason I do that now instead of Ray is because it would take about 20 to 30 minutes for Ray to get the main show file, to transfer it to him, for him to start cutting, whereas I can start cutting it right away. And so the faster we can start cutting it, the faster we're going to get these things up on online. So at about 11:30, I cut up all the segments and then upload them to YouTube, where Ray then goes in there, puts in the titles, his thumbnails, all that kind of stuff, and then Ray publishes that a little bit later. So that usually takes me about a half hour to 45 minutes. Then at 12 p.m., I have lunch. I'll sit down for an hour and have lunch. or whatever. Then about 1:30 p.m., most days I have companion videos I have to do. So usually around 1:30 p.m., I'll sit down and do a companion video. That'll normally take me around an hour, maybe a little bit longer than that, to record the video, then export it, upload it to YouTube, put in the thumbnail, put in the description, all that kind of stuff. That usually take me an hour to an hour and a half. And then it's 3 o'clock and we go right back up to the top. Then it's 3 o'clock and it's time to start working on the next day's show. And then we start this process here all over again. Now, you also have to keep in mind that in the midst of all this, down at the bottom, what you'll see there in yellow is that daytime and nighttime, none of this schedule includes meetings. Yesterday, I had a lunch meeting. So I had to do a bunch of stuff, run out of the house, go to this meeting, blah, blah, blah. Meetings, more social media stuff that I try to do throughout the entire day, going through comments, screenings. Last night, of course, I was in the theater for 6 hours last night. I've got another screening coming up on Tuesday, and then a screening on Wednesday, and then a screening on Thursday. Even though I don't go to many press screenings anymore, I still got to see the movies at some point, right? So there's that. So it's all that kind of stuff. That is a general walk through my day. That, generally speaking, is a general walk through my day. So some days, my work day ends at 7 p.m., which is great. Starts at 5, it's 5 a.m., ends at around 7:30. If I'm lucky, maybe 6:30. Some days, my day ends at 12:30 midnight. You know, I'll start working at 5, and then last night get home from my last screening around 12:30. Sometimes that's my day. So give and takes a little bit, but that's generally speaking. And by the way, in this whole list, what you guys don't see is Ray and Jonathan doing their stuff too. So like earlier in the day when I send out the movie news feed stories and topics, Jonathan then has to put together the movie news feed. When I send out the main show topics, Ray starts assembling any main graphics I need, including thumbnails, including the main show thumbnail, the individual segment thumbnails, and he puts together the email graphics for me as well, which are these ones. So I send Ray the questions and Ray puts these email graphics together for me. So there you have it, guys. I'm sure that bored most of you guys. I'm sure that bored most of you guys to death, and that's fine. I thought it was fascinating. Thank you, Forky. That's good to hear, man. You're a great supporter. But I'm sure that was boring to a lot of you guys. But there it is. That's the general main walk down through my day, and I love it. And I love doing this gig, and I love doing this show, and I'm super excited and happy and thrilled and honored that so many of you guys come along for the ride with me as we do it.